Well, hey everybody, it's Pastor Martin, and I'm on again tonight. I just got off for Bible study not too long ago, but I'm back on again tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. Just want to pop in for a quick minute. Let's talk about this pandemic and talk about just for a minute how it exposed our strengths and our weaknesses. A lot of things we sort of thought we were ready for, prepared for, what we really were not ready for or prepared for. Some people were ahead of the curve, not knowing that this would be something that would take us out of our churches for so long or cause people to lose jobs or be unemployed. But these are things that have happened. These are things that have taken place. And so it has exposed our strengths and our weaknesses. And every now and then we sort of believe that we have things under control. We've got a grip on things. We've got everything we need in place and everything we feel we got it to do when it comes to church work, anything, just not church. But sometimes we find ourselves where we have been somewhat exposed by things that we were not prepared for or ready for. And this pandemic has exposed our strengths. And a lot of us can talk about the strengths that we had, and then it has exposed our weaknesses. There's some things that we have to admit we were not prepared for, even as churches. No matter how big some churches were, mega churches, small churches, medium size, a lot of them were not prepared for things. They were not prepared for electronic giving. They were not prepared for being capable to stream, not just from your church, but from your office or your house. They were not prepared for a lot of things. A lot of those things were not in place. And so it put everyone in a scramble trying to get things in place at the last minute. And now, since we've been out, 7 weeks or whatever, most people are getting accustomed to it, or they're doing it, whether they're doing it with iPads, whether they're doing it with phones, or whether they're doing it with other things. Some people are testing new software out and equipment out. And so that was a weakness that was exposed because we were comfortable in doing most of our stuff in four walls or in a church or whatever. And so since we were accustomed to doing it in four walls and in church, we were sort of not ready for this particular thing. We talked about for years, I'll preach, if I have to preach to empty chairs. Well, we had to do that. And so we were not prepared for that. It exposed a weakness that we had. I said on one of my lives before that once we had moved from church and we had went to another church, we were there a couple of months. And before we had left the church, I really thought we had everything covered as far as security and everything in place. And then one night I got an alarm alert from the company. And so I went over and I found out that even though we were not in the building, what I discovered is now that particular, there was a part that I was not covered. Everything was covered, but that part I didn't recognize and know that people could get in that part where they couldn't get in the other part. And so when I went back, then we worked on securing that part to make sure that everything was covered. And so sometimes there are things that expose our weaknesses where we thought we were covered. Where you thought you were covered with the handling of your bills, or you thought you were covered with the handling of your finance, or whatever it may be. Some things have exposed to the extent that when we come out of this, we will have a different perspective, a different outlook, a different way of looking at doing things and how we're going to handle things. Why? Because a lot of things that we thought we had undercover, under wraps, we found out that we did not have those things. Sometimes we found out that we had churches, large church, small church, medium church, storefront, whatever, but we did not have our weakness was exposed where we were not in a place to that if something like this happened as almost an emergency, that we did not have the ability to communicate on the mass, on a mass communication with our constituents or with the members of our church. Sometimes we found out that we were weak in the area of emails, we were weak in the area of communication with them, no more than being with them in church on Sunday mornings and various things. So we found out that we had a weakness there. There was something that was exposed. And so when we go back, we'll probably have a better. Now everyone's doing conference call or prayer lines with different companies that they're using. Well, there are some that were doing that for a long time. I think we've been doing it for 17, 18 years. I just switched to Monday evenings, but we used to do it on Tuesday mornings, every morning at 5 a.m. And so that was something. Then I used a thing where I was always communicating with my congregation. They would get voice communications from me during the week, and there had to be no special event going on. I just communicated with them, see how they were doing, whether it was an email. I sent out mass texts to them. And so they were used to me communicating with them before this pandemic. They were used to basically everyone at my church went online for giving, so they were ready for online giving. And then my Tuesday night Bible study, I was talking with my son and daughter, and they said, Dad, they said, you've got people that we have members that would love to come to Bible study on Tuesday nights, because we were physically having Bible studies, but I've got some members that stay 30, 40, 50 miles away. And they said to me, well, what have you considered doing the online Bible study? And you stream anyway, so can you do online Bible study? So about maybe 3 months before this pandemic hit, I started doing online Bible study on Tuesday night, every Tuesday night, and we would go one Tuesday to the sanctuary, but besides that, it was online Bible study. During that time, I didn't have it set up for us to do it on Facebook or YouTube. I could have, but I had it directly piped in to our website, our church website, where you can even see it. Only they could see it. And, I've expanded it and opened it up now, but I had it where they could only see it, and it went in only to them. They had the page, they knew how to get there, and we did online Bible study directly to the membership. So that was a strength that we had, but then there may be some other areas where we experience a weakness. So what I'm saying to you in these brief moments is that this has exposed our strength and our weaknesses. I know a lot of people like to think, well, they've got the answer to how to pastor in this pandemic, how to do everything. And sometimes that can be very, not really, I don't want to say deceiving, but somewhat of something that's not really there. Because at the end of the day, none of us, I don't think we're at that age that we've even been through a pandemic like this. We've never seen anything like this before, where the doors of our churches have been closed for 7 or 8 weeks. We haven't seen that before. So we're on the same level, but then we need to help to share with each other our strength and our weaknesses. What do you do what do you have that is a strength? And then what do you have that is a weakness that we all can learn from? And if anything like this ever happens again, then we can turn around and say, well, I learned during the time that we was in the pandemic and the coronavirus was going on. This is what I learned. This is what I learned from pastoring during that crisis. This is what I learned from doing this during that time. All of us can share that what this has exposed us to, and not just in church. It's exposed us to understanding how we deal with our finances, even in a personal way. Sometimes when you got before this, just be honest, you would go to the store and you wouldn't think to buy certain things at the store. You pass them by all the time. But now our whole perspective have changed about what we buy, what we don't buy. There's a thing that happened to us because of what we're in. And so we have to acknowledge that this has exposed in a roundabout way or around in every area of our lives, whether you be in church, out of church, it has exposed some things to deal with this pandemic to deal with us where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. Now, here's the question. Now that we understand what our strengths are, now that we understand what our weaknesses may be, what are we going to do about it? When we come out of this, are we going to do anything different? Are we going to do anything better? When we come out of this as pastors, what would be the changes that we will make? Will we understand that this pandemic has pulled us out of the four walls? Now, what do we do when we go back to the four walls? Do we stay? Do we get comfortable back in the four walls? Or do we come out of the four walls and do something different? Do we remain in the four walls and outside the four walls? What is the strength? What is the weakness of the things that we're going to be doing? And so I just wanted to pop in to give us something to think about, that this has exposed to us our strengths and our weaknesses. And they've exposed them in a major way. There's a major thing going on with strengths and weaknesses, corporately, as a church, as everybody. When I think of even in our denomination, we have we are well advanced, over 100 years old. But what did it expose in the process of what we do, meeting wise, in the process of how we communicate with each other, with all the technology and stuff that we have? Did it expose where we were behind? And I'm not just talking about as a denomination, I'm talking about even local, in our local churches. Did it expose where we were behind or were we ahead? Were we behind in things that we should have been key on, that we should have been right on, we should have been dealing with? What did it expose? What did it say to us? Has it said anything to us? Have we seen or noticed anything? I think all of us can say it exposed something, and we should have learned, or we should be learning something during this time. I've had many people call me asking about streaming, social media, cameras, and other stuff. They ask, well, what are you using? What cameras do you use? What software are you using? All those things. And so that's probably information I should be charging people for, but I haven't. But it's the thing of saying to people, we've got to recognize where the strengths are and where the weaknesses may be. Now we have to adjust what we do, and we have to fit things into what we do, fit technology in to what we do in ministry, because whether we believe it or not, technology has now become a big part of ministry. It's the way sometimes we do ministry, and it's the way that you get things into everybody's hand, and it's there. I'll say this, and I'm going to be done. I did TV for many, many years, and I came off of television in the city and other places. And when I went to come off, the lady asked me, she said, why are you coming off TV? I said, well, right now, from what I'm paying and what you do, I'm restricted to what I can do with you. And she said, well, explain that. And I said to her, I said, I'm restricted to this extent, is that what you do, if somebody doesn't have a thing to record when I come on Saturdays, and if they're not at home, if they're out eating or whatever, then they missed the whole thing, especially if they didn't record it. They missed it. They don't get to see the next broadcast until the next Saturday. So I said, so what I'm doing is I'm coming off and I'm going to focus all my attention. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm going to focus all my attention on online. I'm going to focus it on Facebook, YouTube, my website. I'm going to focus everything on those particular things. And in focusing on those particular things, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach people wherever they are. And she said, explain again. I said, well, that means if a person is not in front of their computer, if they got a smartphone or whatever, when I stream, when I go live or whatever, they're going to be able to look at whatever I'm doing, whether they're sitting in a restaurant, whether they're in their bedrooms, or whether they're walking down the street. They can be at the gym. It doesn't matter. They can even be in church, but they'll be able to see it. And so I have the ability to be able to reach them with better with this particular platform or these particular things. And so the church has to recognize this has exposed our strength and our weaknesses. What are we going to do with this? Are we going to do better? Are we going to use this as a tool of ministry and to reach others and to reach those that are not saved? Because you can reach people that are not saved even there, or even backsliders. I had people that have come back to the Lord by watching our live streams, or by watching even these things that I'm doing here, talking to you people. And I get emails and I get inboxes, I get text messages all the time. I enjoy your live. Some come on here, they never say a word while we on here. Don't say anything. I see them pop up. They don't say hello. They don't say anything. I don't have no problem with that. But at the end of the day, as long as they understand and they get the message, that's fine. So I wanted to say to us tonight that this pandemic has exposed our strengths and our weaknesses. Now let's do something about it. Let's take advantage of our strengths. Let's enhance them, but then let's turn around and where it has exposed our weaknesses, let's strengthen those areas. Let's come up in those areas. Let's do things. Our communication now should be better. It's exposed a lot of things. One of the things I think is exposed for us as preachers is what you were able to do in the confines of the four walls, in the comfort of what we call, if you playing basketball, home court advantage. What we were able to do at the home court advantage in the four corners and the four walls of our church, what we were able to preach there. Hey, evangelist, what we were able to preach there in the four walls of our church to what I call our fan base. Now, don't get offended when I say that, but it is what it is. Most of us, when we inside that building, we got a fan base. They come to hear us speak. They come to hear us preach. And sometimes we have to admit it, whether you good or not good, whether you anointed or not anointed. Some people just come and they like you, they like me, whatever. And they just get with it and they boost us and push us. And, I can't hear nobody and y'all talk back to me. They do that. But this is a whole different platform. This here will expose I'm not even talking about being learned, but whether you know how to rightfully divide the word, if you know the scripture sure enough, or if you just one that's something to motivate people and get them excited. It's exposed all that. So now we have to dig a little deeper in the word and then stuff that we're doing. And we can't be as, I don't want to say this way, but I have to, we can't be as gimmicky online, because now in the four corners of our churches, we're preaching to people that, again, our fan base, and that's what I call it. You can call it whatever you want to, our fan base. But on this level, we're dealing with the whole world. This is not just to our churches. This is not just to our members. This is the people that are unchurched. This is the people that don't go to church. And so we've got to be direct. We got to be solid. We got to be real and everything else. And so in some areas, it's exposed a strength and a weakness. So we have to deal with that. And so I say to you, let's take advantage of, not advantage, but let's look at our strengths, our weakness. Let's deal with them. Let's be honest that we've got them. I know some people will try to act like they had this all figured out. I'm not even going to tell you that, because it's not true. None of us had this figured out. When this first happened, we thought it may be 1 or 2 weeks at the most, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but none of us had this figured out that it was going to be this length of time. And so we didn't know that. And now we still don't know how long it's going to be. And so the strength and the weaknesses, let's deal with them. It's been exposed now. No need of acting like it's not there. It is. And all of us on the same level. No matter how much money you have, because some people, now I do my stuff here. There's some people, they can't do it anywhere else because they don't have the means. When I say the means, they have to go to the church to do it. They can't just sit down and do it. And some people don't know how to deal with iPads and all that kind of stuff. So that's a whole different thing, whole different subject altogether. But if they set up for it, that's fine. But everybody's on the same level because everyone's sitting, whether you at home, at church, or wherever, you sitting down talking to people, and the whole background and everything looks different. So strengths, weaknesses have been exposed. And the question I leave you with is, what are we going to do about them? Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching. Those that are watching now, those that will watch later. Let's deal with it and let's do better. And I believe the Lord's going to bless us as we deal with our strengths and our weaknesses. God bless you. Have a wonderful night or day whenever you're watching this. And I think Thursday is National Prayer Day. Let's keep praying and let's keep believing God. The Lord bless you and the Lord keep you is my prayer.